Thank you very much, Patricia and Stephanie, for having me here. I remember as a young graduate student at Hollins, taking treks down to Asheville and spending all of our free money here. And it was a lovely memory. So it's nice to be back. For those of you that don't know, this is a memoir basically describing becoming an orphan in Ohio and 16 years later, losing my legs to bacterial meningitis and sepsis. 2 weeks after I was offered a full ride to Ohio State for cross country and track. And following that, 10 years after that, I fell in love with off-roading as a replacement for cross country and ended up as a single mother, taking my daughter, trying to drive around the world to visit landmine survivors. Not your average dream or goal, but I grew up in the era of Baby You Come a Long Way. Rita Dove was the first African-American poet laureate of the United States who lived down the street from me. My father actually worked for her at the Goodyear factory. I grew up when Judy Resnick went to space and gave her life for history. And so I thought if you could dare to dream it, do it. So one day I had this dream and I tried to drive around the world in a Land Rover with my little 3-year-old daughter. And I ended up in Bosnia first, just shortly after the genocide that took place there. Part of the reason I wrote this book was, one, I couldn't come up with a better story than my own. And two, one of the things that one of the landmine victims I met in Bosnia, which is, it took me 15 years pretty much to write this and get it published because I couldn't get her face out of my head telling me, please tell this story so that it doesn't happen again. It's very timely that these things are happening again and again. And this month in particular has been quite harrowing. And so I am going to read a section about being in Tuzla, Bosnia, meeting a bunch of landmine survivors for the first time. Thank you. In the main lobby of the Hotel Tuzla hangs a painting of 9 life-sized women standing side by side. The wall to the right of the painting is entirely glass, so that the sun throws a spotlight on each woman, one by one, from morning on, until they all bask in unison for an hour or so before nightfall. The women vary in their manifestations. 4 are whole and nubile, 2 are sporadically bare-boned, 3 expose both abstract and graphic organs, a red box for a heart, a fibrous lung, musculature that streaks like the lights of a Vegas night. All of the women are clear, delineated with rich black lines and splashes of vivid color, jade, pomegranate. They hold different poses. One crouches, one ponders with a fingertip to her mouth, and another looks out to the sky with her arms stretched toward it. I stare at this painting every time I walk through the lobby, once for over an hour. Is the placement of the piece deliberate so that each muse can have her moment in the sun? I am enthralled, as if I see my own metamorphosis in the painting, as if each hour of sunlight brings a new revelation. For 3 days, I can barely hold a conversation that doesn't include the painting. My friend Tina, having heard enough, begins referring to it as the art of suffering. Beyond the painting, through a set of double glass doors, is a cold industrial lounge, a structure of steel beams and glass. It is shortly after 9, our third night in Tuzla, and Tina and I are sitting at the bar with 2 men. Tina hasn't felt well all afternoon and wants to go back to the room. I ask her to at least finish her drink because I don't want to leave the men at the bar, but I don't want to be alone with them either. Salko is sitting to my left. He has amber eyes and no legs. We have a language barrier. He knows about 30 words in English, and I know about 10 in Serbo-Croatian. I turn to him and say, "How old are your daughters?" He pauses, then holds up 5 fingers, and then 8. He pulls a photo from his wallet and passes it to Tina and me. 3 faces smile out from the photo, all blonde and long-haired. The man has a beautiful wife. Tina passes the photo back to Salko by reaching across my back. Salko turns to the man on his left. That man is quietly sipping vodka through a coffee stirrer. He knows no English and he has no arms. Rasich, Salko speaks to his friend, holding up the picture for him to see. Rasich nods his head in stag-like approval. The men lapse into the thick chock-a-block fricatives of Serbo-Croatian. I turn to Tina. Can you make it a little longer? I'll try, Tina replies, pressing her thumb into her side. She adds, it's too bad they don't let you have a translator 24/7. Sacco taps my shoulder then. You, children? I have a daughter, I say. None, Tina says, shaking her head. Sacco raises an eyebrow. Rasich pushes forward his empty glass with a 2-inch stump that balls at the end of his shoulder. Someone has carefully sewn the ends of the thermal he wears so that it fits his stumps snugly. Someone has also rolled his flannel overshirt neat and high. He orders another drink. Salko smiles at me, then Tina, and orders another round for us all. Avala, Tina thanks him. I know both Salko and Rasich are Muslim, but I think to myself, like so many others during Sarajevo's 4-year siege, they may have turned to alcohol for relief, or escape, or both. A young couple walk up to the bar to pay their tab. They are less than a foot from Rasich. The woman is smartly dressed, wearing a brimmed hat, dark hair, loose curls, red lips. While waiting for his change, her partner strokes her cheek with the backside of his fingers. They don't even notice Rasich sitting next to them, stretching his stumps into the air and yawning. What time do we get started in the morning? Tina asks me. The translator meets us in the lobby at 9. Maybe she should meet us outside of the lobby so that she doesn't have to endure a diatribe about that painting, Tina says. I won't talk about the painting, I promise. And then I think of it. This time, the woman whose flesh stops at the waist and turns skeletal, posing like an overt ballerina. Let me tell you what I think I like most about it. Tina interrupts me with a groan, but I continue. I like how raw it is, how it makes no apology for the easiness of removing flesh. It makes art out of removing flesh. Look, Kelley, I'm glad the piece compels you. Write a thesis on it. I don't care. But last night you were approaching strangers in the lobby about it in your pajamas. They weren't pajamas, I protest. Tina chastens me. She actually calls the painting a muse orgy, to my great delight. Then she asks what is on the schedule for dinner tomorrow. I said, dinner with a survivor and his family, I say. Sacco taps my arm and motions toward my cigarettes. I push the pack toward him. You're not so special here, are you? Tina says to me. What do you mean? Well, usually you're the only one, but here you are in a world made up of amputees, she muses. I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that you mention it, it's rather amusing to think that between the 4 of us here, there are only 3 legs and 6 arms. That sounds like a bad bar joke, Tina says. Like the amputee who walks into a bar and says, I'd give my left leg for a stiff one, I say. Tina groans and tries to leave again. Maybe we should excuse ourselves. We need some rest. I tell Tina that I'm not feeling 100% either, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be in Tuzla, Bosnia and Herzegovina again, and I need to write it out. I don't want to miss a thing. I finish off my drink and sit back against the stool. Sacco slides the pack of cigarettes back toward Tina and me. We both take one and Sacco lights them for us. He lights himself one. They are cigarettes from the duty-free store on the Greek border. He doesn't speak a word or make a gesture as long as a drag is left on it. Then he lights another and holds it while Rasich smokes it, pulling it in and out of the man's mouth between smoke clouds. Do you like America? I ask Sacco. He cocks his head toward me, raises his thick eyebrows and says, I like rock and roll. Then he takes my hand in his large warm hand and belts out the chorus of Let It Be. And then he laughs and says, good, no? He gently puts my hand down on the bar and traces the heart-shaped scar on the back of it with the tip of his pointer finger. I do not point out that the song is British. Earlier that morning, Tina and I are sitting in a conference room of the Hotel Tuzla with a group of landmine survivors who counsel other landmine survivors. It is a semi-formal meet and greet, and there I am, suddenly in a room of at least a dozen amputees who've suffered far greater terrors than I've known. I feel small, like my gut is going to unravel. I'm about to slip off to the bathroom to do some deep breathing when the director beckons the translator to start the meeting. Amira, the translator, welcomes me warmly in English. She is the only other woman in the room aside from Tina and me. She repeats the welcome in Serbo-Croatian, and the men around the table clap lightly, which embarrasses me. Then she asks me if I can tell them a little bit about why I am here. I say that I'm going to try to drive around the world. I say that we have something in common, and I lift a leg above the table and tug the pant line up just above the ankle, then set it back down, then lift another one and show them my wounds. I say that I am going to visit 5 Landmine Survivor Network sites worldwide, and that I hope to gather stories that might bring some attention to the needs that still remain in those regions. Once the translator finishes, the man closest to my right begins to speak, and then one after the other, they all begin to introduce themselves. The translator repeats these words in nearly every introduction. My name is X. I was a soldier. There are a few farmers too, and then in a way that reminds me of the cataloging of the ships in the 2nd chapter of the Iliad, which Tina taught me in college, they tell me what they are missing. Right arm, right leg, both legs, both arms, and one leg and an arm, eyes. And then when they are finished, there is an awkward silence because this isn't a normal meeting and there is no protocol. And then Salko stands up across the table from me and says, "Hello, American woman, show me your legs again." And because of the way he smiles at me and pretends to play an air guitar while he spoke, I stand up and jokingly begin to hum a burlesque tune while slowly lifting up my pant leg as if I'm about to reveal a well-defined fish-netted calf of flesh and blood. The boys love it. Then I pop a leg off and slide it across the table to Salko. My prosthetics aren't all that old, not even 2 years, but they are already beat up from my rowdy ways. Even beat up, the technology is considerably more advanced than the prosthetics I see in the room. Salko admires the duct tape on my foot shells, the knife sheath attached to the socket. Salko speaks to Amira, and Amira tells me how Salko stepped on a bouncing Betty, how he heard it bobbing up and down almost like a water sprinkler, how he fell backward to avoid it, and how it blew both of his legs just below the knees clean off. Bouncing Betty is the worst of the landmines. Perhaps it is the personification of the name, but its function seems just as personal. Its job is to spew shrapnel near the waistline of a man, to maim him where it will hurt him the most without killing him. The Latin word mine, from which the mine in landmine is derived, refers to ore or metal. In war, the Romans would dig a hole, fill the hole with metal spikes, and then disguise it. They would then try to lead their opponents onto it. The original intent of the landmine was to maim rather than to kill, so that when other soldiers came to their comrades' aid, the final count of the fallen would be more significant. Salko's wife and 2 daughters escaped the war before it was too late, and no one could escape, and they fled to Austria. They eventually returned when they could, Amira said, slowly, quietly, and it occurs to me that Salko might have survived because of love. I was warned not to make any concrete promises in war-torn countries, that unless you could deliver readily, it's like offering a starving child a voucher for a store that is across the globe. I look out the window where the ubiquitous marks of gunfire and mortar shelling are particularly copious on the buildings across the street. The blood was washed away long before I arrived. And how can I not think of my arrival? The high-tech gadgets in my truck, the satellite phone just for starters. And here in Tuzla, the windows of many homes are still covered in plastic because they cannot yet afford glass. Skeletal buildings are left unrepaired because nails and wood are too expensive. I feel like an asshole. I speak quietly to Amira. She translates, "You gentlemen must think it is crazy for a woman with no legs to try to drive around the world." Salko is unable to conceal his mirth. He bursts out with laughter. Everyone does. Tina pats me on the back, and then Salko says, "We are all crazy. Welcome to Bosnia." The room bursts with laughter, and we spill out into the lobby where someone wants to take photos. Salko grabs me and sits me sideways on his lap, making sure our lack of legs is showing while the cameras flash us nearly blind, but not enough so that I can't see those 9 women hanging there on that canvas and their 18 lovely legs. I take the men outside to show them Athena, my Land Rover. Again, photos are taken in which some of the men are hanging from the cargo rack. Salco and I are sitting on the hood, and then we all smoke cigarettes until Tina and I are whisked off to meet a landmine survivor who became a butcher after the war, who serves us questionable meats for lunch, which lands us in the hotel room all afternoon. At one point, trying to distract Tina from cramps that have her doubled over, I say, I felt like an asshole today, but I think I won them over when I threw my leg across that table. She says, you're not an asshole, but you won them over when you passed out 2 cartons of our duty-free cigarettes. It's nearing 1 o'clock in the morning and there's no Amira, no one to translate, just the 4 of us at the bar. We've exhausted our limited language, and Tina too. She steadies herself, pushing back from the bar, and excuses herself for the night. Dovidenya, both Rasic and Salco say. I'll walk you to the elevator, I say, and once we are on the other side of the double glass doors, I thank her for staying so long and ask her if she's okay and if she wants help to the room. And she replies, not unless you think you should go back to the room yourself. What do you mean, I ask. Do you think it's wise to sit up at a bar all night in Tuzla drinking with these men? Tina, come on, I reply, rolling my eyes toward the painting. The women are in the dark. Not even the low light in the lobby can bring them fully to life. I'll be fine. I'll finish my drink and come straight back. That wasn't necessarily a comment about you, Tina says. You don't know these men, what they might think, what the war might have done to them. The door to the elevator opens. Go on, Tina. I'll be fine. She kisses me quickly on the cheek. I slip back into the lounge before the elevator door shuts. The bartender's cigarette smoke hovers and curves. The smoke is stark against the backdrop of the night sky on the other side of the glass walls. Rasic is face down at the bar. The bartender crushes the butt in an ashtray, then hands Salco a wool blanket that he has stored under the bar. Salco spreads it out on a wooden bench in a quiet corner, and then he and the bartender carry Rasic to the bench and leave him there in a muted snore. Salco is sweating. His thigh brushes against mine as he sits back down at the bar. He stares at me, a puzzled look on his face. He seems to want to explain something to me, but cannot. Perhaps I am projecting my own frustration. Perhaps I should go to the room with Tina. Pivo, Salvo asks me. Yes, pivo, Havala. I'll have another beer. The bartender smirks. Salco laughs at me. I blush. The cold beer is delicious. I feel a small second wind. Halfway through the beer, the bartender leaves and never returns. We simply sit, Salco and I, quietly in the bar before dawn, sipping beer and smoking cigarettes. At some point, I glance up at the ceiling. It's nearly 20 feet high. A metal-plated column runs the length, and 10 feet up that column, a string of bullet holes runs horizontally, like a stream surface pocked with raindrops. I try to focus in on the black center of the holes and find myself wishing I could climb inside one of them. Who did I think I was coming to this place? Why am I staying up until near dawn with this man with whom I cannot even speak? The war is one thing, I rationalize, but amputation has a language of its own. A shared knowledge of such trauma and resiliency requires no translation. Bang, bang. Salco shouts close to my ear, watching me stare at the bullet holes. I nearly fall off the bar stool. He starts laughing. I laugh too, and pointing toward the bathroom, I excuse myself. The water can't come out of the faucet quickly enough. I wring my hands under the cold flow and then part them down the bridge of my nose. I look at my reflection in the small mirror over the sink, and I don't recognize myself. In front of me stands a loose apparition of who I had once been. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. My sweet truck, this expedition's Land Rover, and this entire trip are being paid for by a miniature malpractice settlement. Until today, I never realized the illusion of security that comes with being an American. I've never been this close to a war and its inhabitants. And yet Salco, cut the same way I am, though with what I perceive as multiplied sufferings, seems to want me to be there as much as I want to be here. Maybe Tina is right. Maybe all I wanted was to be in a room full of amputees. Maybe I want to know that I am not alone. However, the amputation that these folks have endured are beyond the severity of what I've experienced. At least that's what my mind says. A mind that doesn't fully understand yet that you can't compare suffering except in terms of perspective. There's always someone worse off. Humility hits me like a hangover, throbbing and thorough. I douse my face again, dry off with my shirt sleeve, and return, swaggering, a combination of the alcohol and sore stumps, back to the lounge. Though there is still no bartender, there are 2 fresh beers in front of Sacco and me. I look at him. He winks. A 5 o'clock shadow is forming on his chin. We clink beers and I offer him a cigarette. And he lights it and smokes it with his eyes fixed on mine until halfway through the cigarette, I tear myself from his gaze. I swig the beer and feel done in, worn out, but high. I lean forward and rest my chin to forearm, extend my other arm across the length of the bar and watch a smoke snake rise from the burning ash. I see Sacco gently clench the cigarette from my hand and set it in the ashtray without bothering to extinguish it. When I wake, my face is in the crook of my elbow and the sky is cinereous blue. Rasich is snoring with a low whistle and I don't remember falling asleep. My neck pains as I pull upright and Sacco is sitting perfectly straight on his stool, looking forward, silent. He beams when he notices my movement. He gestures with his head toward the atrium doors. When I don't respond, he takes me by the wrist and leads me out of the lounge. We pass the painting. I pull back and motion toward it. Do you like it? Sacco looks quickly, distractedly at the life-sized women hovering above us, then pulls his eyes away hurriedly, seemingly confused. He abruptly takes my hand in his, kisses me on the cheek and says, "Good night, God be with you." And then he leaves. My mind is on coffee and whether or not I have offended him by bringing up the muse orgy. Does he not like art? Or does his trauma linger so close in the morning air that he can't risk relishing something as beautiful as art? As if beauty is all too much to risk again. After all, there are still bullet holes in the bar where we were sitting all night, and in the painting, the innards of women are exposed. Are the shades of suffering represented in the painting still too loud in Sacco's mind to even be considered a thing of beauty made with a brush? The opposite of hope is a place. Behind the Hotel Tuzla, where I go to have a cigarette instead of going to the room, there's a small, sparsely wooded park dotted with the same young trees that line the streets. Glossy with dew, stone tiles form a patio with wrought iron tables for 2, and in the center, there is a statue of a 6-foot metallic teardrop. Behind the teardrop, there is a knoll where Sacco has stopped and is sitting on the damp ground. I watch him from a distance. His back is to me. In front of him, the Tuzla skyline of struggling factories, salt baths, and mines is on the eastern horizon. A few funnels of smoke are gray against the pre-dawn sky. I want to walk over and join him, to take his hand in my own. I simply want to connect with him, but I am afraid of his reaction. Would it be as natural and pure as my own intention feels? I start to take a step in his direction when the sun cuts the sky, blindingly salmon in a pencil-thin line. Then Sacco lifts up his pant legs and removes his prosthetic legs. He sets his prosthetics to the side. He rises up onto his knees and opens his mouth and begins to pray the first salah of the day. And as that man sings that holy prayer, the sun persists, and suddenly I feel as close to God and all things that a human might, like a pixel in a divine painting. I begin to weep. My fatigue is coupled with a body ache that doesn't compare to the bliss growing inside of my being. Salt cakes upon my cheeks. I hear the tremble in Sacco's voice, and I know that I am not alone. When Sacco's prayer floats away and pink overwhelms the sky and the flesh is illuminated in its mortal light, Sacco puts his legs back on and stands up and notices me in the distance. He nods toward me, wanders away, and I never see him again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelley. That was wonderful reading. Question to get things started. How did you get your start as a writer? What was your big break?
My big break. In second grade, I was chosen to go to the Young Authors Conference, and I got to meet Beverly Cleary, and then I went 3 more years, and I met Shel Silverstein, and I met Eric Carle that wrote Leah, what is Very Hungry Caterpillar. You know, and I mean, back then I used to make books, and I had the wallpaper samples to make the covers with, you know. Yeah, but the first book that I read that set me in that path, even unknowingly, I still went 17 different directions, was The Color Purple when I was 12. And it was really my first exposure to the hardships of the world and the truth of the world. And I was so blown away by the protagonist, Celie, that I named my daughter after her, who is a large part of this book. So, yeah.
Question from the live audience.
Well, I just love your like storytelling power, you know, like I'm wondering like how do you get that voice in your writing? Like I know that you're a great storyteller, just as someone to have a conversation with, but do you read it aloud? Do you practice it? Do you like how do you get that momentum like in those hit those different notes, you know, where it's humor and then it's like
Yeah, I do have to read it out loud. Yeah. And also my background wasn't in creative writing, it was in classical studies and ancient Greek languages. So I find that I have written most of this book in iambic pentameter without even knowing it.
Has anyone picked up on that?
Somebody picked up on that.
Yeah.
I went, oh, yes. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. And it's, you know, as a poet, Annie, congratulations, Annie Woodford. When God Was a Child, her book was just born yesterday into the world. That poetic voice is so important to me in prose. Like, I can't read a book if I'm not, like, my mouth isn't tripping over every sentence. It's hard for me. So that was very important to put that aspect into the book as well, the art, not just the story. Yeah. Thanks.
Like Kelley is a great storyteller.
Right. I know. I was like thinking.
Well, you're talking
yeah,
about
like
sitting
she
around with
translated.
bourbon, aren't you?
Yeah.
I've told a few stories to you, Annie. Which one are you talking about?
And you know what? That like magic and energy is in this book, which is, I don't know how you do that, but it's great. Like,
The up and the down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's true.
I was listening to an author talk about, he was quoting somebody else about writing, and the pithy part of it was write drunk, edit sober.
I saw that you had opposite over there, though. I thought I saw a little sign that you guys had here at the store that said, "Right, sober, edit drunk," and I was like, oh, "Is it the other way?"
Somebody, whoever wrote that was drunk.
Yeah.
Clearly not.
That is absolutely true. I think that there are certain substances in this earth that open up some of our unconscious places in those early rough drafts, places where we might not have gone if we were trying to be all writerly about it. And yes, I find that I have to be not only sober, but probably have gone through rehab a few times to do my editing. I'm just being facetious slightly.
I have a question kind of along those lines of like, you said it took you a long time and my question is like around the organization of the book, because you jump back in time, like, because it's, you know, it's on your journey, but then you have these big chunks and chapters that are like, go back in time, but will go over several years. And so I'm curious if that's like how it came out. Actually, that's how you planned it, or is like in your editing process, like how you got to that?
So this book has had so many iterations. No, it did not come out like that. But what's interesting, I originally wrote it as a series of short stories. And then I rewrote it as a novel, and I sent that off finally. And I got a nice big agent from New York, wrote right away. And she said, "I'm amazed by the writing." She says, "You say this is based on autobiography." She said, "How much?" And he said about 75% of this at that point, and that part was true. And she says, here's my problem. You have to go back and rewrite it as memoir because it's too unbelievable for fiction.
Yeah, I would buy that.
So I thought, okay, so then I did a series of essays. And then I wrote this book, close to as it is, but I left my daughter out of it to a large degree. She was there, but like I was trying to protect her. And then my editor, my acquisitions editor, she just said, we need Celie. We need that mother-daughter, really. And that really is the heart of the story. And she's a grown woman now. So I called her and I said, they want you. Is it okay? She says, Mama, go. It's your life. It's, you know, she goes, we'll talk about it later, my version. I was like, okay, we still love each other. It's all good. But yeah, so I literally wrote this. Once she gave me that permission, I wrote it in 6 weeks. But mind you, I've been churning in that water for a long time.
This is a question from we're toggling back and forth between virtual questions and live questions. So this is a question from William.
Mhm.
Kelley, please talk about your writing routine and discipline. This differs widely between authors. What works for you?
I am not a disciplined writer. I am not very disciplined in most things, but I mean, I can't sit down from 8 to 2 or 8 to 1. I know a lot of writers do that, and kudos. I'm so proud of you, but I'm never not writing. But I also really feel a need to live and get information as I'm going, and then when the wind dies down, it's time for me to sit and write. Yeah. I mean, I live on Ocracoke, so we live according to the tides, the weather, and it feels very natural to me to write that way.
Do you need prompts? Do you outline? Do you need silence?
I cannot do an outline to save my life. I can't do a prompt really either. Usually it comes to me in the form of a line, and I'll get an entire chapter out of one line that just appears in my head.
Question from the live audience.
So your daughter is so sophisticated at the beginning. Was that really realistic or?
What do you mean? How so? Oh, you've read the book, right?
Well, I've only read the beginning of the book.
Right.
But, you know, what is she, 3? And
She was almost 4 at that point. Yeah. Yeah.
and she was that sophisticated?
She still to this day speaks 6 languages. But she's so unassuming, you would never know. Yeah.
And so did you enhance that or add other parts, or was it really pretty memory? Or
You know, I mean, surely you can't remember the dialogue exactly, but everyone that's in that book that's read it has said that it was as close to spot on as they remember. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
she's as amazing as your book.
She's a sweetheart.
She is
She's a good girl. It's funny too, because in some of the early book reviews, there was a little mom shaming, like, you did what with your kid? Yeah, my daughter read one of those reviews and we were laughing at dinner one night and she just said, it's a good thing I'm over 18 because they'd take me away from you.
So, question from the virtual audience. This is from Kirk. Your book rings with the power of relationship. What do you hope we in the insulated comfort of the United States might take from your story?
The whole point, the whole reason I write is to try to convey compassion. I'm not convinced. Well, I am convinced you can get it from reading. You can get it reading other stories. And some stories are more important to tell right now than others. George Orwell said in his famous essay, Why I Write, which I really love, he came up with a few different reasons, but ultimately as he grew into being a writer, if I'm not writing to change the way people think on a political level, and it wasn't about terms of parties, but like political is in the way I act, the way I move in this world, then there's no point. And so for me, that's my point too. I want to make this world a better place. I want to rewrite the narrative.
Question from the live audience. Then let's go to what's next.
What's next? I am very close to finishing my next book, another memoir, as if I had a little bit more left in me. And it is, again, about trauma and resiliency, a basic beach read. So it's about Hurricane Dorian that pretty much devastated Ocracoke Island in 2019. That's sort of the present day of the story, and it's filled with lots of wild flashbacks, more flashbacks. So similar pattern.
And it's more about your son.
And it's actually for my son. Yeah. So this first book was for my daughter, and the second one, I call it my Iliad and my Odyssey. So yeah, it would be the opposite way though. My daughter was the Odyssey, my son is the Iliad. But yeah.
Any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to say?
I would just like to say thank you all for showing up, because that takes a lot of bravery in this world right now. So thank you for showing up. Keep showing up.
Congratulations,
Thank you
Kelley.
so much.
We appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, audience. And good night.
And good night, man.